All right. Things coming together. Week 9. Each adjustment, each week. I like it. Oh, no. All right. Oh, my wrist is all. So, oops. Wow, I'm already 30 seconds in. I'm going to do a minute pre-roll, and then at 1 minute exactly is where I start. So, I don't know where I'm going to start. I think I'll start back here. Halloween is in a couple days. How was your Halloween? I don't know how mine was yet, but I will. Welcome to the show. Here goes nothing. It's experimental. It's serving multiple purposes. I won't list them for you because that would get boring and distracting. But here goes nothing is the only way to really describe this experiment. I had an idea. I decided to act upon it. And this is part of the result. There's a lot more going on. I'm working on a very important project. And I'm at a critical juncture. And that's, I'm going to be honest, I'm in the heart, like the most critical part of this project. And I had this idea to start this right in the middle of that. Now, that's either procrastination and distraction, or by acting upon that impulse, that instinct to just do it. Like, oh, I have an idea, let's do it. And it turned into this. It was like, here goes nothing. What was that? Smart or stupid? Was I being responsible or irresponsible when I made that decision? Because if you knew, there's so many details in my life that right now, if you knew them, you would pass judgment on me one way or another. Like, we don't know everything about each other. We just know, and we know what we show each other. We know only what we show each other. The public, like every interaction, every individual interaction you have, you are a different person to each one of those people because you know them differently in different ways. You know them from different experiences you've had. And your shared experience is all you have with those people, but you like them, call them your friends, and sometimes you share some experiences with a lot of groups of them. Sometimes you share experiences with one or two smaller groups. But the words that you speak while you're with one another, the words that you say to each other, that's who you are, literally, to everyone else but you. You know you are a complete being. You know you are self-aware. You are conscious. You are experiencing the world and assuming everyone else is experiencing similar things, but that's where we're mistaken most often. It's just a bias. There's all kinds of biases. There's confirmation bias. There's in-group bias. There's optimism bias. So many different. There's each individual has their own bias and multiple biases. I guess that's anyway. Well, you are experiencing the experiment right now just by going on stream of consciousness, extemporaneous babbling. Turn the camera on and speak. Open your mouth and talk about what's going on, but don't talk about too much because you have contracts signed with people. Some people who have signed those contracts you can talk more openly with. And some people you have to be very careful how much you say. Some people just already know a bunch of stuff about what you're working on when you meet them because you go into meetings when you're working on a project, which is exactly the scenario I'm in. So this project, see if I can explain it to you in 30 seconds or less. I record once a week, the beginning of the week, and I break it into pieces and I air it the next week. So this is current. I air it the next week. And each day of the week I try to kind of have a theme, and the Monday theme is explanatory. You just have to stay tuned to see the rest of the stuff. Just email me. So the beginning of Tuesday is me with my head poking around. Alright, so if you've come back to Tuesday, you saw 1 and decided to come back for 2, unless you've already watched a bunch of what I've posted. But if you come back for 2, this is Tuesday. Second section of a recording. I've been recording. I'm not going to tell you how many. You can look into that if you want to, but the theme for Tuesday, so I explained that the theme for Monday was explanation of the project or the episode, what the project is, the podcast, and explain how the programming of it is broken down so that people can track it themselves if they're interested. Some people will be interested in one type of content. Some people will be interested in all of it. So I'm breaking it up into daily themes. And today is Tuesday. And Tuesdays are generally me telling stories about my childhood or things that influenced me. And one story I've been, I got like 5 stories in, and I'm like, well, these are all part of one story as well. So I'm going to practice summarizing this part of my life. So I started summarizing 5 events, but I'm narrowing it down to 3. I'm just going to summarize 3 events, and I'll keep practicing. Maybe this section of the story will turn into something interesting. So today, the 3 events from my childhood seem to work well together as a beginning, middle, and ending of a story. When I was very young, I was taken to I guess it was a party, or I was with my father and we were traveling, and so I guess he was visiting friends that he hadn't seen in a long time. Something like that, or friends of a friend, I don't know. I was a 5-year-old kid. I was with my dad, that's all I knew, and we were at this house. They were hanging out and having a good time. I don't know if I was having a good time. I just remember one thing from that night. 2 things, actually. I remember walking in the house, meeting the people, and then pointing to a corner where there was a pure white husky dog seated, like obediently seated in the corner. And then they went on and, said hi to each other and introduced each other to other people, and something like that. Meanwhile, I was standing there looking at a dog. And I didn't hear what they had said, so I must have just started walking toward it because it was beautiful. I don't remember that specifically, but I am conjecturing because of what happened next. Apparently, I walked straight toward the dog with my hand out. And the dog didn't know how to interpret it, or I don't know how to explain dog behavior, but he lunged at me And he latched onto my face. Latched onto my face. Right, like that. There's a dog on my face. All I have are eyes sticking out. And there's a dog holding my head. My nose is in its throat, just trying to eat me. Right? And that was like this. Actually, I think I had my eye in the dog's mouth. One eye was in the dog's mouth. Yeah, that's right. Just an eyeball looking out of a dog's mouth. And then the next thing I remember, my head is under a faucet with water flowing across my face. And I just got rushed to the hospital and got stitches. So as a child, there was a beast that tried to devour me. Interesting to think about, I guess. But the adults rushed over and saved me. So I had a fear of dogs. I had a great fear of dogs. Large dogs, small dogs, whatever. They couldn't wrap their mouth around my head, but the large dogs could. And they're fast. I didn't see it coming. And it caused me pain. And then the day came when I was visiting my dad again because my parents were separated when I was young. And we were visiting friends again. Except this is where I lived. This is in the hills. We were over at another friend's house, and my dad went home, and I wanted to stay behind for some reason. I don't know, I just wanted to hang out longer. He said, okay. I would walk home. I was 13, so it was like 8 years later. 13 years old. And I loved walking because the moon was out, and the country was beautiful. And walking at night through the country, there's nothing like it. Nothing like it at all. With a full moon, walking down a country road. That's the most amazing experience to have, I think, on the planet, just enjoying nature. Except on the road there was a property where a dog, I don't know, I used to hear it bark. I knew it was there, but the property was covered with trees. The road went right through a clump of trees, and there was a house in there with a dog. So I'm walking home, and I get closer, and I see, I feel straight. I can't see anything except a light, a pinpoint of light at the other end. I know it's a straight road, but let me take a drink break. I'm telling a story. I need to take a sip of water. So, that pinpoint of light was my target. I looked straight ahead, and I just started walking. And it was completely dark all around me. And here I am, walking directly toward a little pinpoint of light, and I hear, somewhere in the darkness, hello? I believe hello was the first word I said. I screamed it out there. I didn't scream it, I shouted it. And I'm not going to shout it that loud, but the light went on shortly. I just stayed perfectly still. Called out. And the light went on. And the dog's name, I don't remember it. I wish I did. But the dog summoned away, and I proceeded on my walk. 13-year-old kid, and learning to enjoy rock and roll music and hang out and party. Yeah. It was like I overcame in that moment my fear of the beast. And it wasn't even like this dramatic thing that, it's like celebration. Well, that's what happened. It was just, there's an expression. Things are meant to be. They just fait accompli. Fait accompli, it's French. It's just like, oh, this is actually preordained. It just happened. So I overcame the beast and went on to thrive, I guess. My creativity from that moment. Tell that story. I had an assignment in school a couple years later, and I came up with a story idea about genetic memory. It's not an original concept. It's probably a staple of science fiction. Genetic inherited memory, or this is more like traveling through time, going and experiencing your direct descendants' life. There's another kind of beast. It's a metaphor. Another kind of beast that turns out to be humans, as they abused technology and mutated, kind of. Yeah. I forget what I called it, but it turned out to be an interesting story. Well, I've already gone way too long for Tuesday, so I'm going to just cut it right at the 30. Email me at heregoesnothing@talesoftruth.com. Heregoesnothing@talesoftruth.com. I didn't go off screen at all. This is Wednesday. Alright, now Wednesday. Wednesday is another day, and it's another theme. I'll say the email address at the front of this recording. Email me at heregoesnothing@talesoftruth.com. I will read your emails on Friday, if you email me. So remember, this is 1 week ago to you. This is what I'm going through this week, and I'm posting it next week. So I'm giving you just a glimpse back in time and what I'm going through. So what am I going through and work on a project? So Wednesdays are Project Wednesday. I disclose a little bit about the project I'm working on. So how much do I want to disclose? Well, I am writing something which turns out I kind of have a creative flair for, I guess. I mean, I don't know where it came from, but that story I wrote about my experiences on Tuesday, that story kind of morphed, and I kept writing other things, and then landing a job in Hollywood and winning a couple of awards and finding a mentor, somebody who's successful in the same type of content that I wanted to work in, who would give me advice. I would go to him with questions, and everything he would say, I would do, I guess, and it seemed like I was just following. That guy was successful, and I followed his advice, and I landed on this project that I'm on right now, and it requires me writing a first draft of a story. In the middle of it, I will confess right now, I started this entire podcast in the middle of it. I got to kind of the midpoint, and cranked down and said, I gotta document this. This is a research. This is an experiment. This is an experience that could be very interesting to some people at some point. Just to state it frankly, if people find this interesting, well, okay, then am I doing a good thing? Am I creating something that will benefit human existence in any way? Well, that's what I want to do. So let's try it. Just start it, and then once I get the podcast up and running, do the other half of that first draft of that story. And so that's where I am right now. I'm actually very, very gradually continuing to do the research I need and write the scenes that I need. And how long will it take me until I'm finished with the first draft? Because that triggers a whole bunch of things. First draft of this story is going to trigger a whole load of stuff. People are going to read a particular story in English for the first time. And what will be will be. The only way to explain it is it's going to unfold in a certain way. And I'm watching it, and I'm wanting to show other people how it's unfolding. I'm just doing it. Look here. This is what's happening in my life, and if that is interesting to you, it's just a bonus. I'm grateful. So today, I'm going to hopefully write a few scenes. I have the source material I need for some scenes. I'm going to write some scenes. That'll be page count going up. And the page count, when I say I'm halfway done, I'm not halfway through the page count, but when you're writing, you're planning ahead, so the planning is part of it. So, I mean, as far as planning, I'm at the halfway point for the whole draft. And that's doesn't mean anything to most people right now, but it will. I presume it will to many people. And some people find out this is happening in conjunction with this other project. The people involved in that project find out about the podcast. That's what I'm getting at. When the people who will be interested in this project, this first draft, this story I'm writing, when they see other creative ventures pursued by this person who's also doing your project, it has a good effect. It could have a good effect. I mean, it tends to. It tends to multiply the net benefit. I think are the words I'm looking for. Increases the net benefit. And by so doing, you are advancing life or creating life or thriving. You are helping others to thrive. Well, I will tend to babble on, but if you find it entertaining and you are curious to see how this will unfold next Wednesday when I talk about the project, then tune it in, and you can even go back and look at the Wednesdays. I didn't even break it into themes until probably, I don't know, week 2, maybe, at the earliest. I don't know, maybe it started with the same themes that it has now. I don't remember. I'm just doing it, knocking it out. So, knock yourself out. Come back tomorrow for Thursday. Thursday. Again, at the top of each episode, I need to invite you to email. Email me at heregoesnothing@talesoftruth.com, and I will read your emails tomorrow, which will be next Friday, I guess. If you get the email to me in time, it could be in the very next Friday's episode, maybe 2 weeks away. But the sooner you email, the higher the likelihood you'll get read on the show. I don't know if anybody cares to be read on the show, but I will read people's emails. I'll preview them and read as much as I deem I could or should. Maybe if something strikes my interest, then I'll just read a piece of it. But email me. We'll see. We'll see if and when I start getting emails. So Thursdays I've been talking about this one moment where my trajectory turned. So this is part 5. I think 2 words that were uttered to me and then that I read. Literally, I came to this point where I was in a conversation with a guy. So you take in words in 2 ways. You hear them and you read them. So your eyes perceive written symbols and your ears perceive sound waves. So there was a day 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, when I walked into a meeting and it was all audio words, like all the words that my ears were hearing. We weren't reading and looking at charts or anything. It was a conversation, and it was supposed to be an hour meeting. It turned into a 2-hour meeting, which is always a good thing. Right? Whenever the meeting goes longer than both parties anticipated, it means they are enjoying the conversation, I guess. I mean, that's the only way to interpret it. And kind of midpoint in that meeting, the ears took in 2 words. The ears took in these 2 words that caught my attention. I mean, all the words were interesting, but there are these 2 particular words that are significant because of what happened about 20 minutes later, or half an hour later. The conversation went on for another 20 minutes to half an hour, maybe, at the most. I hear those 2 words, and then remember how I talked about the 2 ways we take in words, your ears and your eyes. So his eyes were taking in like elevator floors, 6 going down to 1, street signs. But as far as when your attention is on something, he sits in his car. I sat in my car. Sometimes I refer to myself in the third person. Don't know how I want to tell a story, as if it was me or just ambiguously. But it was me. And I got in the car, and the first words that I wanted to read, my eyes, like I didn't want to get on a phone call with anybody. I just wanted to read some things. So before I even put my keys in the ignition, I look at my phone, and there's any number of things that you can do. You can read news, you can read emails, text, look at pictures, you can do whatever. You can search the internet, you can do some homework, whatever, on your computer in your hand. And the first 2 words my eyes fell upon were uttered in that meeting. So it's like the audio hearing of the words and the visual seeing of the words line themselves up in my experience. Boom, boom. The very first 2 words I saw it was a news feed, and the 3rd word actually was included in the other 2 words, but I hadn't really been, I'm not going to say what it is, but there were 3 words. The 3rd word was movie, because that's why I was meeting with the guy. So it was these 2 words and the word movie after it, and so did the headline. So it was 3 words that lined up. The first 3 words I saw was ding, ding, and movie. Yeah. Didn't actually see the word D-I-N-G, D-I-N-G. You know what I mean? So, it just snapped my attention into focus. What? I went in that meeting thinking one thing. Those two words jumped into my head back to back. Heard it, see it, boom. Locked in. Like my focus was locked on to this subject matter. And Thursdays will be the telling of that story. I mean, I keep repeating this part, but that story is getting, I guess, the way I tell it is starting to flow a little better. But I'm going to cut it short because I don't want to go too long. This is Thursday. I'm going to do Friday and be done. Don't forget to email. And in the emails you can ask me to talk about anything that I've said. You can say, can you expound upon that or elaborate more or even offer? And if it piques my interest, I'll read it on Friday or even bring it in on a Thursday. Somebody wanted me to talk about such and such, so I did. Maybe it's somebody who knows me. Say, hey, I know this time in your life, why don't you talk about that? So I'm baiting. I'm giving ideas to the emailers. One thing I have to do is keep my eye on the clock, so I'm going to cut it off right about here. All right, let's get Friday over with. Do you know what Friday is? It's Email Friday. Did I have a name for it? I don't think I had a name for Friday. Or did I? Well, at the top I need to tell you to email me because that's part of this experiment, and you can get your words documented in the record of this podcast. You know, you join the experiment, basically. That's how it works. If you email me, you are a part of the experiment, period. Fridays, I just talk about emails now. Since I have one to read, I'm just going to read it. But let me say, in case you didn't know the email address, it's heregoesnothing@talesoftruth.com. That comes straight to me, and I do what I'm about to do right now. First, a sip of water. Ding, ding. Oops. Thought I left my straw. Well, it certainly is a pleasure to be on camera at the moment. It's just fun. Look, my glasses. Oh. My wardrobe. I had a wardrobe malfunction. You saw it there, didn't you? Yeah. Let's see. Glasses stay. Yes, they do. Now, Friday email. Let's see how well I can make it look closer here. That sound, what was that? Sound effects, sound design. Let's look at this. I wonder what kind of reflection, how much I'm giving away just by showing reflection. Let's see. Yeah, let's see how far I went. I don't know. I wonder how much detail this is going to be. I have to lower the resolution on the. I have to check into how much will be picked up in that reflection. Here we go. This is from St. Cloud. This is St. Cloud 3, actually. Or was it 4? I don't remember. I've read a few emails already from St. Cloud. That was fun! Exclamation point. Regarding, responding to St. Cloud 1, St. Cloud 2, LOL. Alright, that's what this... I've dubbed this person St. Cloud. I ventured. It strikes me as funny now, too. I didn't... it has kind of a funny meaning when you look at it. I was like, oh, yeah, St. Cloud. And it seems appropriate. I ventured onto Google to see if I could get some data on the highest number of Google searches for a word or topic. These numbers can go well into the trillions of results, in quotes, results, depending on the word or topic. In addition, there are 7 major search engines, so to rely solely on one search engine would make the data incomplete. There's a piece of information I didn't have before. There are 7 major. Where is it? Oh, yeah. Oh, here we go. I'm just getting ahead of myself. In addition, there are 7 major search engines. So relying solely on one search engine would make the data incomplete. Oh, so you need to search all the search engines. Let's get all the data on the thing. Because there's different information in the different search engines. How many people knew that? How do you switch? How do you know which search engines? Let's see. That's me interacting with the email. For example, I searched the word God, and 1,000,000,006,000,000,000 plus results came up. Add to that the results for 6 other search engines, and the numbers become astronomical. Okay, so topics that people are interested in. Yeah, what are the words that people are looking up? Alright, that's my comment. I've given a lot of thought. This is not my comment, this is continuing. I'm learning how to read on this podcast here. I've given a lot of thought on the subject of how our advances in technology have not only moved us as a human species further away from connecting with our Creator. I don't know if I buy that. Let's see. But now it is pushing us away from each other. Okay. Yeah, so I understand that sentiment, and I get where that comes from. But that's to treat technology itself as intrinsically... Well, that's the question you have to ask. Is technology intrinsically good or instrumentally good? Because intrinsic good is different. Instrumental, when something is instrumental, you can just use it for good or evil. So instrumental value, but intrinsic value is itself good. It's the opposite of no value is intrinsic, if that makes sense. Those are the words I said. That's what will be entered into the record, but let me just keep reading. To me, my understanding... let's go back. Given a lot of thought on the subject of how our advances in technology have not only moved us as a human species further away from connecting with our Creator, but how it is pushing us away from each other. To me, my understanding of my God is cemented in the relationship, and that word relationship is in all caps. All right. Yes. That is how it is described in the text. Brothers and friends. Yeah. A claim of deity and the offer or the acknowledgement of a state of being. Yeah. It's the acknowledgement of a state of being when you realize what you are according to this theological framework. There's a theological framework, and I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm going to have to read the rest of this next week, but let me go on this tangent. There's a theological framework. How much of it do I... My set is showing. Yeah, Freeform Friday. It's out of control. I'm gonna lose my train of thought. No, is a theological framework that makes an assertion. Like all these different theologies make different assertions, in this particular one says that we are literally, actually deities, right? There's a theological framework that says that. Actually, there's probably several, but the teaching, it's like there's, how do you know if something is true or not? You just kind of have to test it out. So that's what that was distracting. Let me get back on track. Did you space out with me? I spaced out, and it looked like a planet or something floated by in front of me. But I'm back. Maybe it will orbit and come back around. But getting back on track, there's a theological framework that suggests humans are deities, actual deities intended for eternal life. Right? That sounds a bit crazy. Just like a hair crazy. What can I say? It's what's taught. A lot of people teach a lot of things. There's a lot of different teachings, but that's one that it's actually fairly common. And some people totally buy into it, and some people absolutely don't. They laugh it off, and so it's like, is it Pascal? No, not Pascal. There's a wager. I forget the name of it. Somebody's wager. They say it's better to believe in God and be wrong. The other way around. That's kind of how it's broken out, I think, phrase. But if you were going to test out a truth, like a truth claim, come straight to that decision in your mind. Truth. What? Oh no, I don't know what it means. Truth. Right? What is? If you really know how to define truth, like there's plenty of people claiming to define truth. Just can't come to words, right? What if you couldn't even come to words to define truth? Can you? Cannot? Well, the closest thing I'm coming to lately is objective reality. Present moment. Right? What's happening right now, right around me, now in this continuing moment. And that's kind of what I'm doing in this experiment, tracking the moments. So, if you want to test out a truth, is the human species actually the deity intended for the garden that is Earth? Oh, the deity of a planet. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't believe there are. So I'm a science enthusiast as well. So I was going to say a scientific statement about belief, but the mathematics seem to be against the notion that another spheroid. Like Earth could possibly exist. That it couldn't. Like the science is pointing toward that the first event produced Earth as the most advanced end of, or region, the region of space. Like it all just explodes out from nothing. Ability to perceive it. I'm kind of waxing esoteric in my philosophical meditations. It's all people. There are people that say science doesn't need philosophy or doesn't use philosophy, or philosophy is a waste of time. It's like they don't understand that the very words they're using are philosophy. The two go hand in hand. Philosophy of science is about as, I would say, advanced and important detector of truth there is. I don't know if that sentence even made sense. Philosophy of science is like when you are determining truth. I think philosophy of science is the field you need to listen to try and get closer to a definition of truth, what it is. Science and philosophy of science, they go hand in hand. You can't separate them. And there are people that balk at that. They just, like respected teachers just babbling a bunch of interesting sounding incoherent nonsense, like ad hominem attacks and jokes and comedic put downs, and that's all they do is they just entertain with a bunch of a priority gobbledygook. Like listening to this guy in a debate, and the one side is just as clear as a bell what he's saying, and the other guy is like trying to make jokes, and it's like I just feel like the human mind has just a truth sensor. It's just a truth detector, and that's all I want to kind of explore here. This email got straight to the heart of some of it. It inspired me and got me thinking about worldviews, like what is true, and there's one. Everybody should step up and try and define it for themselves. Is there such a thing as absolute truth? What is intrinsically valuable versus instrumentally valuable? Start thinking about life and what is the most important thing. And, that's what this discussion is. I like talking about DNA and how it's unique and, amateur scientist, but it's philosophy of science. There's philosophy. Why is what we observe the way it is? When we observe the physical universe, why is it the way we see it? And it seems to make sense and seems to be, it's fascinating. So you can admire science and because it describes the universe, but then you have to take the philosophical, you have to answer the philosophical questions as well. Why? Right? The big why. And, sounds like, forget it, don't even bother trying to answer that one, the why. But that's what's beautiful about science. It's like functions are determinable, or purposes are determinable by science. You can test something out and figure out why it exists. And so that's where the conversation is. You can figure out the why. And I like to meditate on the why. And I actually, have been journaling about it. And now I'm documenting it here. So I'm going to sign off here in a sec. But email me. If any of this random babbling nonsense made any sense to you and you're interested in getting in, email me at heregoesnothing@talesoftruth.com. All right. some of you are still here. Some of you, are you still here? Yeah. So welcome back. This is Listeners 3. Listeners 3. Another audience, the audience that found this. I don't know how big this audience is, but I am playing with light, teaching myself how to do this and what is possible in a frame. I put some things in this frame. Got a curtain hanging here. Got stuff back here. So, listeners, was that kind of mind-boggling? Some of the stuff in today's, I went longer. I just started talking and then just looked at the clock and started rounding it down. And I don't know, how can I wrap this up? And deciding when I'm going to stop and how the next one will start. It's like training yourself to do it every moment of every day. Imagine that. Like if camera's on you all the time. It's editing, self-editing. It's not something natural that comes natural to everybody or anybody. I don't know. Some people are just really good at it, but I'm trying to train myself to do it, and that's what this is. Thank you for listening, listeners. Somebody has yet to be the first one to email me saying, I found the listeners' special exclusive episodes. You get one a week. I don't want to cut you short. I don't want to cut you off. I don't want to cheat you, but you listeners should get rewarded. I don't know how to reward somebody, but the first one to email me. It may not be. There's one person, my collaborator on this project, my cohort, who is watching every episode, quote unquote, every episode. If this person just watches the weekday ones, they may never watch the weekend ones because they start to assume that everything that's being recorded is just broken up, and that's the way it started. But then I realized, I can find another audience, and here we are. Some other experimental portion of this project, The Light, another audience. You are the listeners. Welcome to all the listeners. That's the name of the show, I guess, The Listeners. Episode 3. Now, how round a number will we be? Email me to be the first member of this community besides me.